charge on that in many respects. And so, as Narendra himself said, supply chains are no longer just about cost, they're about trust. And for a nation such as India, that rightly sees itself as an economic powerhouse in the future, particularly in manufacturing of so many of the new economy products and consumables, they need a partner they can trust when it comes to the supply of the base resources and other processed items that feed into their economy. And so that's why Prime Minister Modi effectively has made quite a big exception. I mean, I was there through the RCEP negotiations through ASEAN, and they stepped back from that because there was a lot of sensitivity around trade policy in India. But we were able to push through that because of one big reason: trust in Australia, trust in our government, and the relationship that we've been able to form over these years.
Thanks very much. Now, I know amongst our members, workforce shortages and skills and training is probably the most significant issue on their plate at the moment. We've got a question from Steve Coughlin in the audience. Steve's one of the founders and managing director of Burncut. They're a large mining contracting services based in West Australia.
Prime Minister, thank you for the very encouraging comments in relation to the industry, but one of the issues we all face, obviously, is skill shortage, and that does not just relate to training in Australia, it's the resource pool, full stop. So what are your comments on how can we increase skilled migration to help top it up?
Well, I think what we'll see, and it's not just skilled migration, it's also people moving around the country too. I mean, where there's population pressures on the eastern states. I think the economic opportunities here in Western Australia, and particularly now we're in that, getting to that post-pandemic phase, I'm hoping to see more people moving internally within Australia. But the second point I'd make is we do have to continue to build up the skills of our own population. And one of the exciting things I've been seeing happening here in Western Australia for some time now, particularly in the resources sector, is the increasing number of women who are moving into the resources sector. And in what is sort of called, but I don't think we can use this term anymore, Macadia, non-traditional female industries. There's no such thing. All industries are female industries. And the resources sector is increasingly heading in that direction. So that is an opportunity. That's why we're investing so much in training. Now, you will see the skilled migration intake pick up as we come out of the pandemic. Obviously, the inability to have a skilled immigration intake over the last few years has caused some shortages. There's no doubt about that, and we were experiencing them before that. So you will see, particularly here in the West, that opportunity for that skilled migration to increase. But we've set our caps and we've set our levels on that. It'll take some time, I think, before those caps are troubled in terms of the build-up of the pipeline, again, of people coming. I suspect we'll see a great interest in people coming to Australia from Eastern Europe in the years ahead. We have reached out, particularly in the situation of the war in Ukraine, and we have thrown our arms open for people to come from Ukraine, and they're being given humanitarian visas and support on arrival. But they're coming under tourist visas, they're coming under education visas and a range of others. But I suspect the uncertainty in Europe, which will be around for some time, I think there's an opportunity to encourage people from Eastern Europe, very much as we saw in the post-war era. That's why I really do think that the period we're about to go into is a period of economic opportunity like what we saw in the post-war period. And of course that involved people coming from all around the world, and Western Australians understand that probably better than most with the strong intake. And that's why I think we were talking about the India agreement. And Ben will tell you about them. It's a very vibrant Indian community here in Western Australia. And they are amazing. And so the linkages that are made by families who are already here in Western Australia, very strong Indian communities, that is also another area I think where we'll see migration increase in the future. But we have to keep a national perspective on this, and we need to ensure when people come to the country, they go to the parts of the country that we want them to go to. And that is Western Australia, that is South Australia, that is Tasmania, that is the Northern Territory. And so our programs for regional migration in particular are all designed to support that, and Bridges and our regional ministers have been very focused on working on getting people. You can open and let people in, but you've got to guide them to where you want them to be and where the jobs are. But this is another reason we're investing so much in the regions. I mean, I've been around the migration space all my life. I mean, it takes me back to my university days, but people go where the jobs are. So if you want people to go to the regions, get jobs in the regions. That more than anything drives people to the regions. And I think during the pandemic, the system has been shook up a bit, and people have gone, I actually don't have to live in the middle of the city. I don't have to live in a big metropolitan area. I have more options. And so I'm optimistic, I think, about what we'll see of the growth of regional Australia, and I think that could lead to a very different settlement pattern for migrants in Australia, which takes pressure off our major cities in Sydney and Melbourne and even South East Queensland now, and ensures the regional areas are the benefits, so you hopefully get the best of both worlds.
Maybe just one last question, Prime Minister, a bit off the resources sector, and you mentioned it briefly, the war in Ukraine. What's your sense? You said it will be going for a long time, and recovery will take some time. What is the end game, do you think, in Ukraine for Russia?
I spoke about this when I spoke to the Lowy Institute a few months ago. I spoke about the arc of autocracy. The world, and President Biden made this point at our first meeting of the Quad. And the whole point of the Quad, India, Japan, the United States and Australia, is about, in our region, in the Indo-Pacific, demonstrating the practical benefits of liberal democracies, about how that's good for the economies, how that's good for people's personal freedoms, how that's good for regional security, how it's good for economic cooperation, movement of peoples. That is the right way forward in the Indo-Pacific, not the path of, well, we'll trade with you, but you have to do what we say. And we have seen that bullying, we have seen that coercion in our own region. We've seen it from China, we've seen it from Russia, we've seen it from other nations from time to time. And the world needs to deal with this. And this is why Narendra Modi and I and Prime Minister Kishida, as Prime Ministers in our part of the world, joining with the United States, with President Biden and other members of the Five Eyes community in New Zealand and Canada and the United Kingdom, there's a real job for liberal democracies to hold the line when it comes to the impact of autocracies seeking to impose their will on other countries. I mean, one of the reasons we enjoyed as a globe so much prosperity post the Second World War is there was a rules-based order that was put in, and it was put in by countries that basically, principally, came from that liberal democratic worldview. Now, those autocracies in the world today, they're trying to change that, and they're trying to turn it into a different type of world order, working to a different set of rules. It's not in our interests. I don't believe it's in the interests of countries in the region. But to go back to your specific point, yes, I regrettably believe that what we're seeing in Ukraine will continue. The Ukraine government, President Zelensky, has led his country incredibly, and Australia has been there with them all the way. And when I've spoken to him and his Prime Minister and others, particularly in the Ukrainian community here in Australia, who've been over to Ukraine, they say, they note that they're getting support from other countries in Europe. And they go, but Australia, you're half a world away. And you're out there at the front, whether it's on humanitarian aid, sending our munitions, our bushmasters and our drones and all of these sorts of things. They are amazed. And I tell you why we're doing it. Because we stand up for these principles as a country. And we can, and we should. And we won't sit passively and allow the complete turning of the tables on our world international order by those who would seek to change it by sheer force and coercion. And it sends a message to all those others who would seek to try that Australia is no soft touch under my government. when it comes to protecting not just our national security, but the peace and freedom of our region as well, working with other like-minded leaders.
Thanks very much. That's all we have time for today. So